So I wanted to briefly just go over the idea of slope and y-intercept and make sure that you guys understood that and remembered all of that information because it's going to help you out today. So slope, a couple different things. Slope, first of all, is our rate of change. That's just another phrase for it. It's a synonym. In a word problem, it's our per amount. When we're looking at a graph, we rise and run. When we're looking at tables and ordered pairs, we can use this formula. You never have to memorize the formula y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1 because it's always going to be on your formula chart for you. So you don't have to remember that. It's just going to be available. The other thing, and the newest part of this, is talking about our y-intercept. Well, our y-intercept is always an ordered pair. It's 0, comma, some number. It's always on the y-axis, and in word problems, it's our beginning. It's our initial value. The very last thing I want to point out is that both the slope and the y-intercept are part of this equation, y equals mx plus b. Remember those solve for y's that we take every single week? Well, the reason we're doing those is to review this content. So m, whatever is attached to x, is always our slope. B, whatever is by itself, is always our y-intercept. So as long as we have our equation in this form, then we can find the slope and the y-intercept. So we have an equation, 3x minus 4y equals 16, and we're going to solve for y so that we can find our slope and we can find our y-intercept. So if I'm solving for y, then I'm going to draw my line. I need to move the 3x over. It becomes a negative 3x. And then I'm dividing by a negative 4 because that was the number in front of y. So I end up with y equals 16 divided by negative 4 is negative 4. Negative 3 over a negative 4 is a positive 3 over 4. X. Remember that my slope is always what is attached to x. So my slope in this problem would be 3 over 4. My y-intercept is what is by itself. So my y-intercept would be positive 4. So if I wanted to identify that in this problem, then I would say that my slope is 3/4, and my y-intercept is the ordered pair 0, negative 4. Sometimes you have a graph. When you have graphs, it's kind of nice because your y-intercept is really easy to find. Your y-intercept is on the y-axis, which is the vertical axis. So all you're looking at is where does your graph cross the y-axis? Well, looking at this problem, it crosses the y-axis at this point right here, which is negative 4. So that means my y-intercept is going to be the ordered pair 0, negative 4. Now, to find my slope, I need to rise and run, which means I need some more points on my graph. So that means I need to go look at my line, and I need to see where I have points on this line that are good, solid, like whole number points that we can use. So if I'm starting from here, like this point is not a good point to use because it's somewhere in the middle. I don't know what it is. But obviously my y-intercept would work because we know it's at negative 4. This is not a good point. That's not a good point. That's not a good point. But this one is, because notice here, it goes right through where this x-axis and this grid line intersect. So that's a great point for us to use. They're at positive 1, 0. So there's a point here. There's another point that if we keep going and looking on our graph, if we keep going, there's one right here that we can use at the ordered pair 2, 4. That's another point that would be good for us to use. And to find my slope, all I have to do is rise and run. I've got to count how much I have to go up and over to get from one point to the next. And notice it's like a step, okay? So let me show you what you don't want to do at this point. This is bad, so whatever you're doing, don't do this. It's bad if your step looks like this. I see that all the time when people like go way up and then over and then back down. I'm like, no, 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 no. That's not how this works, okay? That's not how this works. So we're just going up and over. That's it, just up and over. And we're going to figure out what the slope is. Well, if I start counting, I'm going from here up 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. And since I'm moving up, that makes it a positive 4. And then I'm moving to the right 1 step. And since I'm moving right, that makes it positive 1. So my slope is 4 over 1, which is 4. So my y-intercept would be 0, negative 4. My slope would be positive 4. Okay, well, sometimes we have ordered pairs or just points, sorry, that are on the graph. So I can find the slope the same way. My y-intercept, I'm going to have to do that a little bit different, but my slope, all I need to do to find that is I need to rise and run. How do I get from one point to the next? I need to make my step. Well, if I start counting, I'm going up 1, 2, 3. And since I'm going up 3, that makes that 3 a positive 3. And then I'm going to count over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And I went to the left 8, so that meant that I went negative 8 because going left is a negative direction. So my slope is 3 over a positive 3 divided by a negative 8, which is the same thing, by the way, as saying a negative 3 over 8. Those two fractions are exactly the same because what that means is that there is a negative sign and it's a 3 over 8. That's really all that matters. Now, to find my y-intercept, I'm going to have to do something a little bit different here because when I look at this graph, there's no way that I can find my y-intercept just from looking at this. Like, I could even try to draw my line. That's totally fine. I can do that. But if I try to draw that line through there, it's kind of hard to tell exactly where it crosses. Like, it looks like it might cross at 1, and I'm going to agree it's going to be something close to 1, but it's not going to be exactly 1. So we're going to have to use stat edit. We're going to have to use stat edit to find this y-intercept, but that's also going to be helpful because stat edit gives us two things. Our stat edit is going to give us our slope, so we can see if we did that right, and it's going to give us our y-intercept. So in order to use stat edit, the first thing you need to know is what are these points? Like this point right here that we had on that graph that was given to us at the beginning. I'm going to color green right there. Well, that's the ordered pair. Okay, so with points, keep in mind, points and slope work different. So with points, it's a parentheses with a comma. And we move left to right first, and then we move up or down. So this first point here is over negative 3 up 2. So it's the ordered pair negative 3, 2. My second ordered pair, which I'm going to color yellow over here, that was on the graph, well, I move over to the right 5 and then down 1. So it's the ordered pair 5, negative 1. And this is what we are going to put in stat edit. So as you can see, I've got my calculator up here, and I'm actually going to walk through the steps on how to put this in stat edit. So very first thing you're going to do is you're going to press the stat button, and you're going to press enter. And then over here in L1, we're going to put our x's. Remember, our x's are the numbers that are first, which is negative 3 and 5. And then in L2, we're going to put our y's, which is 2 and negative 1. So that's the other numbers you see there. And then after we get those in, we're going to press stat again. We're going to move over to calculate here at the top, and then we're going to move down to number 4, and then press enter a bunch of times until we get to the next screen. And what this does for us is this gives us the it gives us our slope and our y-intercept. Well, I'm going to tell you that this first number here, this negative 0.375, that number is my slope. If you were to do negative 0.375, math enter, you would get negative 3 over 8. The other number, 0.875, is my y-intercept. So that second number, B, is my y-intercept. So my y-intercept in this problem is going to be 0.875. We want to convert that into a fraction, and I'm going to tell you that's going to give you a fraction of 7 over 8. So my y-intercept for this graph would be 7 over 8, or the ordered pair 0, 7 over 8. So for this next problem, I have a table, and I need to find the slope and the y-intercept. So we're going to use stat edit again on that. It's going to be a great tool for us. Okay, so again, we're going to walk through how to put this in stat edit. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clear out the screen. I'm going to go back to stat and press enter. Okay, so notice I've got some numbers in here. I need to get rid of them. To do that, I'm going to move up to L2 and hit clear and enter. Never, ever, 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 ever hit delete. Only hit clear. The same thing, move over, hit clear, and enter. That gets rid of everything that's there. Just like before, in the left column here, I'm going to type all of my x's. So that's 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11. All those are going to go in L1 in the left side. Do the same thing for my y's. I'm going to put 6, 1, 4, negative 9, negative 14 in L2. Now notice that there's the same number of elements in both. That's really important, okay, that these two line up. Then I'm going to go back to stat again, move over to calculate. I want to pick number 4, press enter a bunch of times, and it gives me this as my equation, or gives me this as my slope and my y-intercept. So it's like, well, how do you read that information? What does that mean? So that first number, again, the number that's A, that number is your slope. So negative 2.5 is your slope for this problem. So your slope would be negative 2.5. And then your y-intercept, well, that'd be the other number, which in this case is 13.5. So it'd be the ordered pair 0, 13.5. And then our final problem here is to find the slope and the y-intercept from a word problem. So remember, for a slope in a word problem, we're looking for something like the word per, or maybe each or every. And our y-intercept is always our beginning. Our y-intercept is always our beginning, like what we started with. So if we read through the problem, Mason had $200 saved up from his birthday. Each week he gets paid $40 for mowing lawns. Write an equation to represent this situation. Well, each week he's getting paid $40. That kind of sounds like the word per, because we could say that he's getting paid $40 per week. So that tells me that my slope is going to be 40. Okay, well then I'm looking for the y-intercept. Remember, the y-intercept is what I began with. Well, he'd already saved $200. So that means my y-intercept is 200. Okay, so let's fill this information in on this table here. This is what your paper looks like, because I want to make sure you understand the final piece of this. So my slope is 40. My y-intercept is 200. And the very last thing that we want you to do is we actually want you to write the equation of this line. I know you're like, I don't know how to do that. Yes, you do. Because every equation looks exactly the same. So we're going to write it here. It's y equals, and I'm going to write it, the formula above it, then we're going to fill it in. Our equation is always y equals mx plus b. Well, we already know what m and b are. We've already found that, because remember, m is my slope. Sorry, let's try that with the correct color here. M is my slope, and B is my y-intercept. So that means my equation would be y equals 40x plus 200. And this is the very final thing you need to do after you've gone through all the problems, found all the slopes, found all the y-intercepts. You need to go above those and write those equations. Y equals mx plus b form.